The major finding is that there's been a further diminution of the number of hungry people in the world from about 805 million last year to about just under 795 million this year. This reduction suggests a slowing in the pace of reduction of hunger. And this basically means that we have fallen short of the MDG 1C target, namely to halve the proportion of people in the world who are hungry. As usual, there are many ways of looking at it. One can look at it as a glass half full or a glass half empty. And I think one has to recognize the tremendous efforts undertaken in many countries. In fact, 72 countries have been able to achieve their national MDG targets in terms of halving the proportion of hungry people. Considering that we monitor we do not monitor all the countries in the world. This means that over half the countries who are monitored have achieved the MDG 1C target. The regions which have made the most progress have been East Asia, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean. South Asia has made some progress, but it has been modest, and Sub-Saharan Africa has actually seen an increase in the number of hungry people. But it has nonetheless made some progress in terms of the proportion of hungry people, considering the high population growth rate during this period. The only sub-region which has actually experienced an increase in the number of hungry people has been West Asia. Everywhere else there has been some progress, but not quite enough. The major factor has been what might be termed inclusive growth, in the sense that economic growth has enabled a lifting of all boats, if you will. So even though inequalities in some countries may well have increased, as they have in countries like China and India, the fact that you have had rapid growth and it has enabled many more people to earn much more, this has basically meant that that there has been significant progress, especially in China, in terms of, and so China and India alone contribute to about 4/5 of the diminution of the number of hungry people in the world. The factor which seems to stand out most are what are referred to as protracted crises. Crises which might be due to conflict, ongoing conflict, and sometimes crisis due to a major natural disaster which has persistent effects long after the occurrence of that natural disaster. Those two factors have probably been the most important factors in explaining the persistence of hunger in many parts of the world. There have been problems. For example, Sub-Saharan Africa experienced almost a quarter of a century of economic stagnation from the late 1970s until the early part of this century. And it is only in the last decade that there has been some growth, and sometimes that growth has not necessarily been very inclusive. And more recently, as we know, commodity prices have fallen again throughout the world, and this has adversely affected growth rates in developing countries in general, but particularly in Sub-Saharan Africa.